The information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio on W4HC Radio, where you can learn to accelerate your body, mind, and spirit to reclaim the true potential that exists within you through cutting-edge wellness, tools, and modalities. Here's your host, Sara Banta.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio on W4HC and W4CS. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. For those of you joining us for the first time today, a little background. I graduated from Stanford University, as well as the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and the Invincible Wellness System, where you essentially become your own doctor. As I was on my journey for my own health issues after hitting rock bottom with hormonal issues, thyroid issues, literally no digestion, and having Crohn's disease, I was introduced to holistic modalities, supplements, nutrition, and cutting-edge technologies that heal the body naturally. Partially through my journey, my 9-year-old son at the time was diagnosed with leukemia, and I had been introduced to a supplement now known as Accelerated Silver, which is a scalar silver, which you can find on my website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. And that I started giving to him in addition to cleaning up his diet a little bit. And within a year, not only were the cancer cells gone, but the anemia and other nutritional deficiencies he had disappeared as well. So with that, I had to take the natural path, and I knew there were solutions in every direction. You just had to find them. He's now 17 years old, never missed a day of school from the cold or flu in the last 8 years, and he's a national record holder for crew. He's been my inspiration to stay on top of the cutting-edge modalities and supplements that go after curing the incurable and helping my clients live their most optimal lives in body, mind, and spirit. I truly believe that the body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself, regardless of what chronic disease you may have. And I'm here to answer your questions and bring you innovative, cutting-edge technologies and health solutions to empower you in your ability to reach your optimal state of health. In alignment with the mind part of our body, mind, and spirit's health, I wanted to have Jason Goodman on as he blows me away with his ability to be open and mind-stimulating with his investigative nature. Jason is an internationally acclaimed filmmaker and stereoscopic cinematographer. After leaving Hollywood, Jason began a new career in the field of independent journalism and created Crowdsource the Truth. Just as Goodman transformed the 3D motion picture production industry, Crowdsource the Truth turns the page on traditional investigative journalism by combining it with the powerful interactivity of social media and the cinema verite aspects of reality television. Jason has created an engaging series that informs and entertains the audience while simultaneously involving each member of the viewing public in investigations themselves. Demanding truth in media and integrity in government, Crowdsource the Truth is a viewer-sponsored news source that goes places and asks questions that corporate-controlled, advertiser-driven traditional media simply cannot go. Jason, welcome. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that great introduction. You make it sound really good.
Well, you are beyond impressive, and sometimes I always say when you learn, especially in the natural health world, about different solutions, you realize how much you don't know. And I also find that people that don't want to learn about natural health solutions also don't want to know about what's going on and things that you like to discuss and uncover. And it's a lot easier to be naive and ignorant of what's going on in the world. And it's just so impressive of what you're doing and how you go about it. I just am beyond blown away by what you do and how you do it.
Well, thank you so much, Sara. And it's interesting what you've just said, because as you were introducing the show, I was actually, for the first time, realizing that you're 100% right. Just as you had this experience of going to all these supreme expert doctors, and I mean, you know, you live in California, a very metropolitan area of the United States where I think all of us expect the finest medical treatment is available. You're not off in some hut in some remote country, and yet the doctors had no solutions for your son's health. So instead of just resigning yourself to some horrendous outcome, you wouldn't accept that and you went looking for alternatives. And it was very much like the situation that I experienced when I realized that the news was a horrible alternative to reality. And I felt that I needed to find some better remedy. I knew it was out there, just like you knew your son's health could be repaired. It was just a matter of having the proper approach.
Yeah, and I think back as to what my motivation was to not fall back on traditional medicine. And I think, you know, for me, when I had first gone to the doctors for my digestive issues, every week I went into the doctor's office, she literally asked me my name again. She didn't know my name.
Wow.
And yeah, and we had tests go, you know, tubes up me and down me and around me, and there was no real conclusion. And then I started searching out the alternatives, and there were true answers. And not only true answers, but these answers for my digestive issues were the same answers that led to the whole systemic breakdown of my body. And it's when I look at the news, for instance, I mean, you can go to regardless of what side you're on, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, liberal, conservative, you know, are you getting the truth when you go to the traditional news channels? And I don't believe so. I think there's it's skewed regardless of which channel you're turning to, and it's what they call the fake news. And so I want to know with you, what drove you to take this alternative path away from Hollywood and away from traditional news in the beginning?
Yeah, well, I've always been kind of a swimming upstream sort of guy. When I was in Hollywood, it was about 10 years ago at this point, and you mentioned that I was a stereoscopic cinematographer. I've always been fascinated with 3D. When I was a little kid, I saw a 3D movie and I just was so overwhelmed by it. It struck me as the closest thing to magic that I had ever seen. And just from a very young age, I was 10 when I saw this 3D movie. And I remember I went home and started trying to make comic books with red and blue crayons, and that didn't work. And I was pursuing this art form for most of my life. And then in college, as I began to learn about computers and more about photography and stuff, I was finally able to actually create 3D images. And I just, you know, again, similar to your response to traditional medicine, I just wasn't very satisfied with the tools that were available to create these movies, so I started making my own cameras and I really got into it. But the 3D industry in Hollywood collapsed, and I don't want people listening to think that I or you, and certainly I can't speak for you, Sara, but you and I have been getting to know each other. I don't think everything in this world is a giant conspiracy. However, I do think, and we've heard many times from reliable statistics, that something like less than 100 people, less than 100 individual billionaires control something like 90% of the wealth in the world. And so if you're at the top of that extremely pointy pyramid, you don't want all the hundreds of millions and even billions of people down below climbing up to knock you off the top. And we've seen this happening. I'm not saying anything conspiratorial here, but we know that under the 1996 Telecommunications Act, Bill Clinton eliminated a lot of the checks and balances that prevented consolidation of media. These laws were put in place to stop wealthy interests from consolidating all the media so that they could focus a particular story and basically propagandize the public. However, that was 23 years ago, and we are well into the era where the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who obviously has an interest in understanding what you buy and getting people to buy stuff from Amazon.com and now Whole Foods. They're consolidating retail. They're consolidating your shopping experience. I think a lot of people are aware that Amazon, at one time, I'm not sure if they still have it, but they had a vast $600 million cloud data services contract with the government that included storing information for the CIA. So the level to which these corporations are integrated with government is not really clear to the people of the United States. And when we start to hear about how companies like Google can control what you're searching for, can do things to stop independent news sources like Crowdsource the Truth from bringing you information that you can evaluate. I mean, it's as if you left that doctor and wanted to look into things like colloidal silver and organic food and changing your diet, and someone physically stopped you from being able to see those things and led you to believe that the only option you had was this pharmaceutical treatment being offered by a doctor who doesn't even know your name.
Absolutely, and that I've seen that in my website and people searching my website. It's not showing up on Google like it used to, and that I've heard that from other natural supplement stores and websites as well. And it's really scary because then it's not giving the people what they need and what they want to search for, and it's truly controlling what direction they're being pointed into.
Sure.
So what do you see with all of your interviews and research? What do you see as the biggest threat to us and our health?
Well, it's a difficult question. I mean, you know, there are a lot of threats to our physical health. I think that just in my lifetime, and I think you're younger than I am, but we're about the same age, I've seen such dramatic changes to the food that we eat. And, you know, I haven't had a strawberry that tastes remotely sweet in I don't know how long. I feel like I'm clinging to a childhood memory of what a strawberry tasted like, but there's so much industrialized farming going on, even when the food that we eat has not been inundated with pesticides and other chemicals. I feel like the growth of the population and the growth of this attitude where I don't care if it's February, I want a strawberry, has caused all of these, you know, scientific developments in agriculture that have maybe, at best, robbed our food of nutrients and at worst, introduced chemicals whose effects on human health are not yet fully understood. There was recently that settlement with Monsanto with regard to glyphosate and Roundup from one individual for several $1 million, but I don't know if that really addressed the fact that this glyphosate product has been used so much for so long that it's permeated the groundwater, it's permeated the soil, and it affects foods that are even grown organically because it gets into the rain. We've got pollution in the ocean from coal burning factories, from the nuclear disaster in Fukushima, from the ongoing consumption of fossil fuels. And these things are very concerning to me, Sara. I'm troubled that we have celebrity politicians like Ocasio-Cortez who, I mean, let's face it, someone, somewhere, in my view, said, hey, look at the popularity of a celebrity, for instance, Kim Kardashian, whose popularity is largely based on her physical appearance and her attitude and personality, not necessarily on things that she's done. And I'm not disparaging Kim Kardashian. I think she did a very good thing by speaking with the president and getting that woman's sentence commuted, but I don't think she's famous for that. So you look at somebody like Ocasio-Cortez and you compare her to Nancy Pelosi or Maxine Waters, she's obviously much younger and she's going to be more physically attractive to a wider range of people. So they're using her, in my view, as a sort of a spokesperson for these ideas that they want to promote, namely that carbon dioxide is the biggest threat to our environment and human health. And I find this to be an absurd fallacy. I think that there are far more dangerous chemicals being put into our environment every day. I haven't heard any talk in that Green New Deal crew about aerosolized aluminum injection, a practice that is commonly dismissed as chemtrailing, and we're told if you talk about that or analyze that, you should put on a tinfoil hat. Yet former CIA Director John Brennan spoke to the Council on Foreign Relations and told them that he's very interested in this practice and that it could be useful for increasing the conductivity of radio frequencies and electrical signals that are transmitted through the ionosphere. So there's some sort of scientific experiment going on at the top secret level, and we don't really know anything about what the effects of that activity are on our health. And we do know that carbon dioxide causes trees and plants to grow. So again, the question that you've asked, Sara, what's the biggest threat to our health? Well, is it aerosolized aluminum? Is it carbon dioxide? Or is it the fact that we're being so systematically lied to that it becomes an incredibly difficult puzzle to just figure out what is or isn't true?
I agree, and you talk about Monsanto for a second, and you're so right that not only, I mean, if you're eating organic food, you're still getting it in your food because it's been in the soils from the non-organic food, and glyphosate is the #1 cause of leaky gut. And if anyone's listened to me talk, leaky gut is the #1 cause of all of these autoimmune diseases and then the systemic inflammation and the mass increase of disease that everyone is seeing, cancers and everything. And it's so hard to protect yourself, and I try to give people some tools to protect themselves from these things. But my goodness, wouldn't it be easier if these threats weren't even there? And Fukushima and Chernobyl and all of the radiation that's been put into our waters and our system, and people say, well, I'm getting my iodine from my seafood and seaweed. Well, that's been contaminated. So now you're taking in radiation inside the seaweed and the seafood, and that's going against what you're actually trying to do. You're trying to get rid of the radiation out of your body and supplement with iodine, not put radioactive iodine in your body.
Right.
And we don't know which way's up as far as this. And when we talk about 5G, I would love to hear your take on the 5G and what's going on in the United States. I see these commercials where it's glorifying all of the amazing things that we're going to be able to have with 5G. I was just talking to someone who said, I love it. I can check on my phone what's in my refrigerator so that when I go to the market, I'll know exactly what I need to shop for, and the smart meters and everything that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. No one is really looking at the threat of the EMF exposure and what we're going to be faced with, and there's no testing happening. But what are you seeing with the 5G and the increased EMF exposure?
Well, it's an interesting question, and actually my attitude about this has been shifting lately because I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't conduct some kind of test and determine what is 5G going to do to everybody. But I went to Anarchadelphia, which is an anarchy event run by these guys in Philadelphia. And I don't want to go into the details of anarchy, but it's not about throwing around Molotov cocktails and beating up the cops. It's more about self-determination and everybody respecting everybody and not having a government. But at this event, Max Egan, who is a well-known Australian alternative news personality, was talking about the dangers of 5G. And he was saying how it's going to give people cancer and it's dangerous and why do we need it? All you're going to do is download movies faster. And I found a couple things about his argument to be just incongruent with a lot of what I understood to be true. Now, first of all, after this speech, Max stepped outside to have a cigarette. So I thought to myself, if this guy's smoking cigarettes, why does he care about getting cancer from a cell phone? He's definitely going to get cancer or emphysema or, look older prematurely or feel like crap or all the terrible things that cigarettes do to you. So I began to think, if this guy is so ultimately concerned with his health, why would he do that? And I recognize that each of us we make compromises. I mean, I try to be as healthy as I can, but boy, I love ice cream. And I'm going to eat it. So if somebody hears me talking about health and sees me eating ice cream, they might say I'm being a hypocrite. But that was the first problem I had with Max's breakdown of 5G, was that he's not concerned about cancer from cigarettes, which are also coming from some large corporation, but he is concerned about cancer from the cell phone. His other argument was, why do you need it? You're just going to download movies faster. And I found this to be a remarkably narrow-minded comment because, first of all, I remember the first computer I ever had when I was young. It was a 7 megahertz computer. Now, even the crappiest computer you can buy today is 1,000 gigahertz, or sorry, 1 point something gigahertz, so many, many times faster. And would someone say, what do you need that for? You're just going to type emails faster? Obviously not. We can see from that analogy that as computer processing power and network bandwidth and storage capacity increases by these dramatic leaps, it enables computer applications that we can't even envision right now. I think that each of us who are concerned about 5G are probably carrying a cell phone. I have a 4G cell phone, I had a 3G cell phone, and although there are dangers, you could be looking at it and crash your car, you could get hit by a taxi. People are saying that regular cell phones are giving us EMF exposure if you put it near your head, if you sleep with it near your bed. There are risks associated with using technology. Certainly you get into your automobile, you might crash. It's burning gasoline, it's putting carbon monoxide into the atmosphere. I'm sure there were buggy whip salesmen in 18 whatever who were running around telling people we have to stop the introduction of the automobile because it's going to be dangerous. And they were right. It is dangerous. Lots and lots of people die from crashing in automobiles, getting hit by automobiles. I don't know how you'd calculate the increase in cancer from burning gasoline from automobiles, or manufacturing the paint that they put on automobiles, or batteries in electric cars. So I've begun to realize that any technology at all, any technology, somebody invented the wheel. Cavemen said, hey, that's great. The first guy to get run over by a wheel said, wait a minute, these wheels are dangerous. We should stop them. So it's a balance. And I'm not advocating for 5G. I'm not getting a check from Verizon or something like that. I suspect there are dangers associated with it, but I've begun to wonder how much of what we're hearing, even from the alternative news, is accurate to the science, and I just don't know if 5G will have a significant impact on health or not. I do know that before anybody had cell phones, like when I was a kid and you had 3 TV channels and no Wi-Fi and no cell phone, there was a lot less exposure to electromagnetic radiation. Right now in my apartment, even if they stopped 5G entirely, there's like 100 Wi-Fi routers all around here when I turn on the computer, and all of those are exposing me to EMF radiation. So I'm not trying to say I don't think it's a problem. I've just begun to wonder, to what degree are we properly informed about the risks, and to what extent do we even have a choice?
Well, I think it goes back to a little bit of how we started with, what are we being told, and are we being, is the information given to us being funneled? And, I understand your frustration with him smoking outside the building after he says his one comment. There have been over 20,000 studies on 5G done, and they are not talking about those studies. When you see a 5G cell phone tower, it's got thousands of antennas on it versus the 4G, which only has a few. And you have to have each tower 500 feet apart from each other because the wavelength is shorter. So it also hits the skin in a different way, and there's a higher risk of skin cancer. So there are the risks of 5G is exponentially more than 4G, but they don't want you to know that. And that's why these things are not talked about. And you just see the Verizon and AT&T commercials on TV that are glorifying these beautiful towers. Yeah. And it's funny because as soon as I started I got a new phone a year ago. It's the 10, and I have my old phone still. And I can feel a difference when I hold my new phone, just
Wow.
because the increased in power, my fingers start tingling. So I literally have a protector around it. And every time I have the ability to, I set it down and I put it away from me. And I'm always talking on speaker. I never
Yeah.
put it up to my head. And then I also am making sure I don't sleep with it in my room. And there are things that you can do. And sometimes you don't know the effect of the EMF exposure on you, as if you're in your apartment with all of this,
Right.
this radiation, because you don't know any different. You haven't been out to the woods into a cabin away from
Exactly.
technology to
Exactly.
really let your body settle down. And it's being pinned as one of the other main issues of anxiety, depression, because it literally scrambles your DNA. And your body is trying to sync with the high rates of the frequencies, the high rates of EMFs, the high rates of the frequencies. So your brain is trying to keep up with that and scrambling. And but no one's talking about it. And it's really hard to even know what to question if it's not even an issue being talked about.
Right.
That's the problem. And it's just is one more example of you needing to be your own advocate, whether it's health or politics or lifestyle, in trying to create what is healthy for you. And, I believe mindset is a lot of it too. And there's a placebo effect. If you want to believe that something is going to be really damaging to your body, it's probably going to be a lot more damaging to that person than the person next to him who's saying there's no problem here.
Yeah.
So there is a balance. And that's a question I wanted to ask you with all of the things that you're uncovering, and I'm having a hard time with this. And sometimes I don't like to look into politics, and I don't like to look at the bigger picture because I don't feel like I can control it, and it becomes very overwhelming to me. With my health, I can take control of it. I can, take my supplements, do the diet, do my meditation, exercise, do all the right things. But when it comes to bigger issues like politics, and how do you stay away from becoming overwhelmed or feeling out of control?
It's an excellent question, Sara, but it presumes that I don't feel overwhelmed, which is not always accurate. Sometimes I do. Just real quick before we get off the 5G thing, I do want to answer that question in detail, but I think you raised a lot of excellent points, and I think that you're right. You've got to be your own advocate. I have been doing a lot of the things that you suggest, keeping my own phone out of the room when I sleep at night. I used to have it right next to the bed. I also never put it up to my head. I use the headset, not wireless headset or speakerphone. And I've thought about, would it be insane to build some sort of shielding in the bedroom, so at least for several hours at night there could be some mitigation of this EMF bombardment. So I think that's just it. I mean, look, there's always going to be somebody who smokes every day until they're 90 and nothing happens, and somebody else who gets a heart attack at 41. So it differs for everyone, and we do have to be our own advocates. With regard to not feeling overwhelmed, it's again, all of these things are very personal matters. While I understand where you're coming from with this notion that you can control your health and you can't control politics, really at the end of the day, either of these things could easily spin out of our own control, whether it's a traumatic accident, a fire, some 9/11. You could have had the healthiest person in the world sitting in that building, and if they escaped, maybe they've got some kind of inhalation malady, or perhaps they were crushed in the building. I mean, really nothing is in our control, but I think that we get some sense of relief by being able to deal with things that we can at least have an influence on the outcome. And with regard to crowdsource the truth and getting involved in reporting on politics, I just really got to a point where I felt like the news was a disservice. They were doing a disservice to the public by not giving us true and accurate information. And a lot of people look at my program Crowdsource the Truth, and they criticized me for claiming to be a source of truth. And I want to clarify, I don't necessarily know the truth of these matters. I'm looking for the truth. The concept of crowdsourcing the truth is I put these stories and these news reports out to the public, and the public at large comes back with information. I mean, this is the way that you and I met. You were a guest on my regular show with Ole Damagard, Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard, and before that, you were a member of a crowd. You were an American, you were a person, you were out there, and when you got involved with what we were doing, you brought information to me that we now can put into this giant equation of trying to decide what is or is not true. I'm sure as you've gone through your health journey, you've found certain things that you thought might work and didn't, and other things that you didn't know about, and you make these discoveries along the way, and you start to refine your process. So as far as how I try to prevent the feeling of being overwhelmed, I just really keep my eye on the ball and keep my eye on the goal, and try as much as possible to not get distracted by things that aren't going to help me to pursue. But you see, that becomes very difficult as well, Sara, because as you've experienced, obviously there are laws that dictate what you can and cannot say about nutritional supplements, and we don't want to mislead people into thinking things that we don't know are true or not. I've been taking a lot of your supplements from Accelerated Health Products, and I find them to be helpful. Again, I'm not a doctor. I haven't done some kind of clinical study of whatever kind of level of something in my blood before I started taking them and after, but I know that I feel very good, and I feel that these products are helping me. I can never pronounce it, diatomaceous earth or whatever it's called.
Diatomaceous earth,
Yeah, I like that product a lot. I like the Accelerated Silver. I like your iodine product. I've got something that's supposed to be growing my hair back. I don't know if it's working or not. But one of the things that I appreciate about your products and about more natural products in general, there's a real sense, you watch all these commercials on TV, and if you've got restless leg syndrome or anxiety about leaving your house syndrome, or you don't have hair, or you have too much hair, or you want hair, there's a pill for everything. And people want to take this pill, and in a week or two or 6 to 8 weeks, problem solved, thing goes away. And in my experience, that's, first of all, not the way that the natural order of things work. Things take time to grow and evolve, and I think in a general sense, when you try to do things to change the natural order of that, there are sometimes unexpected results. And I think you would agree that there are a lot of doctors. You spoke about a doctor who didn't know your name. She didn't get intimately involved in your situation enough to know your name or even the details of your health. But I don't want this audience to feel that that doctor is somehow evil and doing that because she wants you to be dead. I think that doctor is probably overwhelmed, like the question you just asked me, and she's doing her best to service as many patients as she can. And like each of us in our jobs, you have to find a way to make that work. So I'm avoiding feeling overwhelmed by continuing to work, continuing to produce shows, continuing to dig into stories that I don't feel are being adequately covered, and seeing the feedback from the audience that's growing, the people that appreciate what we're doing. And I think you're in a similar situation. There's got to be trolls who comment on your videos and go to your website and give you grief. And there's also probably a lot of people, I would think more people, who appreciate what you're doing. And concentrating on the people that appreciate what we're doing, I think, is an important way to avoid that feeling.
And that's something that I've learned over the years, because I was always the person that would ignore the 9 compliments I got and just focus on the one negative comment I got. And that's how I grew up. And now I've realized that in order to move forward, you truly have to envision a positive feedback, positive outcomes. And I listen to Joe Dispenza a lot. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he talks about how envisioning your day, you can create your day before it happens. So you're living your future. And if you're envisioning that your day is going to go great, it can. And just for instance, a small example is this morning I had some fireworks between my two daughters. They were going back and forth. And I just sent them a little text saying, let's make this a great day. I love you both. And you guys are lucky to have each other. And they are very good about manifesting. And they have, in situations like this, they will come home and say, Mom, I manifested a better day, and look at what happened. Yeah. And that you can stay focused on the positive people in your life. And during my rock bottom health years, I had a lot of people that were naysayers and saying you just need to be put on Prozac. Right. And they said, what are you doing creating a health business or health supplement business? That's the last thing you should be doing. Right. And I stuck my nose to the ground, and I wanted to prove them wrong, but I had to focus on myself and what I knew, and that I knew I was going to find the truth, whether it be the right supplements to use or the right mentors to believe in, and not listen to them and know that they are not open to the things that I'm open to, and to really focus on what was working for me. And I've spent thousands of dollars on junk supplements trying to figure out what works. And that's why I came up with my business, because I wanted to save people money and create one place where they could find things that actually work. And as far as your hair growing back, that takes time.
Yeah, I know.
Right? That's one of those things where your body says, well, I don't care about your hair and your nails until I take care of all your internal organs and everything else that's right. And the hair is the last. So when your hair grows back and your nails are strong, your body's doing really well on the inside.
Yeah. And you know what also I find very supportive of that statement, Sara? There were a lot of people, John Pilger and Craig Murray, who went to the Julian Assange hearing in London. And they both independently made remarks at how shocked they were to see the accelerated aging of Julian Assange. Now, that's obviously a person who has been subjected to unhealthy living conditions, poor nutrition in prison and in that embassy, no exposure to sunlight, fresh air, minimal exercise, and his aging is accelerated, right? So it certainly stands to reason that the opposite of that could decelerate or possibly even reverse some of the visual signs of aging. I remember when I started on my journey, and it hasn't been as extensive as yours, but I eliminated certain products like, not just food products. I changed my soap, my shaving cream, my shampoo, my cleaning products, and I definitely noticed a difference with that. You know, when I would clean my bathroom or something, spray all this stuff all over the bathroom to clean it, if you inhale at the wrong time and get a blast of that atomized chemical, you feel it. That's not good for you. That's obvious. And now when I use these organic products to clean, my bathroom is still very clean, but I never feel like I'm being exposed to super toxic chemicals while I do that. And you know, I ran into a friend of mine from Los Angeles. I moved out of Los Angeles in 2013 and ran into a friend of mine 4 or 5 years later. And she ran up to me and was like, I didn't recognize you immediately. You look 10 years younger than the last time I saw you. And I didn't prompt this person to say that, so something is working properly.
Yeah, and that's with all the EMFs that you're living under.
Right. Yeah.
So no, it's so what are your tips for being on the move? Because you are so busy. I don't know anyone that's more busy than you, and keeping up with your health.
Yeah, it can be difficult, you know. I do my best to try to eat organic food as much as I can, and I recognize that that's not always possible. I do not eat McDonald's or Burger King or Buffalo Wild Wings or any of that kind of fast food, junk food. I mean, if I was given no alternative whatsoever, I might do that, but I try to be very diligent about not eating fast food, not eating processed food. I try to exercise as much as I can. I never drink tap water. I have a reverse osmosis filter here that I use for my drinking water and even for boiling pasta. I know you hate wheat and all that, but I also, the other thing I find remarkable is I'll listen to one person who makes a lot of sense and looks extremely healthy like yourself, who will say, no wheat, no pasta, but you got to eat, grass-fed red meat and natural, organic, wild animal protein and stuff like that. But then I'll listen to somebody else who says, oh, no, you can never eat meat. Meat is going to kill you. And it's like, well, I think to a certain extent, people need to determine what works best for themselves. Like, I mean, you might eat a piece of cilantro and think it feels like it's cleaning up your body and it tastes kind of unique and interesting, and other people cringe at it. So obviously everybody reacts differently to everything, and I think people need to kind of find these things for themselves. But detox, I find incredibly important. When we talk about health, we always hear about nutrition and exercise, but I don't think there's been enough emphasis on detox.
Right. I agree with you. And back to your comment about people finding what works for them, we just watched a show about performing high performance athletes on a vegan diet.
Yes.
And my husband said, Sara, you're telling me all the wrong things. I said, okay, so you can't have your eggs this morning. And he said, okay, I'm out. and my daughter said, well, I'm not living in the house if Dad's not allowed to have his eggs, because he needs that to kind of anchor him for the day.
Right.
And so I think everyone's different. Do we need as much meat as we're eating right now? Probably not. Could we? And I do eat a very heavily plant protein diet. I just am not opposed to eating wild fish and organic meats and that sort of thing. But everyone's different, and whatever works for you is great. And I've tried all the diets. I've tried paleo, vegan, vegetarian, keto. I've even done the carnivore diet for a few days where I have no plants at all. And that was an interesting study. It was not sustainable, but did I feel good for those 3 days? Yes. Did I crave the vegetables? Absolutely. I was ready to reintroduce them when I was done. So it's just interesting, and I do believe everyone needs to test it out themselves. I think everybody agrees that sugar and processed foods really are not needed in the body. And
but
that
ice cream.
I know. I eat the healthier ice cream, and I know I love cheesecake.
Yeah.
Hey, cheesecake, you can make them in a ketogenic way if you really want to.
And that sort of thing I really love. Taking what's commonly considered junk food and making a super healthy version of it, like a grass-fed hamburger on a bun that I've baked myself with cage-free eggs and, grass-fed butter and all that. I've done that, and trust me, I feel a huge difference in those things.
Yeah.
I like a variety of diet: vegetables, meat, fish, chicken, all that.
Well, Jason, we're at the end, and we have to do this again because we have so much more to talk about. But before I ask my last question, tell people where they can find you.
The easiest way to find me and my shows is by going to crowdsourcethetruth.com. That is a website that will lead people to our various social media sites: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. I'm really most active on YouTube, and people can sponsor my show on Patreon and Subscribestar, where I post exclusive content only for the sponsors, and the show is really heavily focused on that exclusive content because I can't do these shows without the audience participation. And just like we were saying, when we have these huge corporations that are paying for the commercials on the news, and every commercial is about a pharmaceutical product or, big gas and oil or whatever. Those, multi-million-dollar companies are having a huge influence over the editorial content of those news sources. So in part of what I'm doing as trying to locate the truth, I felt it was very important to remove corporate advertising from the equation and rely on individual micro-sponsors who are the viewers. That way the people who are financially supporting the show know that it is their interests that I'm concerned with, and no one has an undue influence over the reporting.
That's awesome. So what top 3 things do you do or focus on every day to accelerate your body, your mind, and your spirit?
Top 3 things. Well, definitely the organic eating, not drinking tap water, and focusing on detox. I'm very into the Gerson method, and people can look that up. Perhaps we'll talk about it some more in the future. But when I was at I had no acute health problem like your son did, but when somebody showed me a picture of myself from, 5 or 10 years ago, and I was like, my God, I was fat. And I wasn't fat to the extent that you'd see me walking down the street and say, oh, this guy is obese, but my face was bloated, my neck looked thicker, and I just definitely wasn't as healthy as I am right now. Since then, have had my mercury dental fillings, my dental amalgam fillings removed. I've taken a variety of different supplements that bind, including ones from Accelerated Health, that bind to these heavy metals in the body. And I have really seen a huge improvement. At the time that I began, I had a mercury test, and I was mercury toxic. I had 26 nanograms per microliter or whatever. I was at 26. The Department of Health considered between 5 and 14 to be normal. I think, frankly, 0 is where you want that mercury to be. But I got it from 26 down to 9, and I have noticed a dramatic improvement in my health, my thinking, my mood. It really has changed my life.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to go to a short commercial break and be right back with my top tips for traveling and protecting yourself from radiation in addition to keeping your diet on track. Thanks,
Great.
Jason.
Thank you, Sarah.
We're back with Sara Banta, and I want to talk the last few minutes, just real quick, about my top 3 things to get rid of the radiation in your body. And that is from the EMFs and the 5G. The way you can protect yourself is the accelerated silver, which helps detox you and boost your immune system. The second one is the iodine, the accelerated iodine, which you can take 3 times a day, boost your immunity, metabolism, and energy. It also helps kick out the radiation, both ionizing and non-ionizing, out of your body. And the third one, which is the most effective, and it's called Nuke No More. It's scalar charged ormus, and it helps detox the radiation and has antidotal frequencies that neutralize nuclear fallout, and also neutralizes the non-ionizing smart meter and electro pollution that we talked about before. I wanted to thank you for joining us today with Jason, and if I can help you with any of your health issues, contact me, Sara Banta, through the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. I know it's sometimes hard to know where to start. So you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and my YouTube channel under Accelerated Health Radio. Don't miss next week's show, and please send me your questions and topics you would love to hear. Again, you can find the supplements and many informational videos on my website, Accelerated Health Products, and use coupon W4HC20. That's W4HC20 for 20% off site-wide, including all of the supplements that we mentioned today. Thanks again for joining us here on Accelerated Health Radio, and we will see you again next week and talk about the benefits of CBD oil with the CEO of Hemp Depot. Thanks again for joining us.